1, 2, 3, 4. All right, welcome back to this episode of Country and Cold Cans. I'm Logan, sitting here with Trucker Andy and Kyle. Be sure to give us 5 stars and a great review wherever you get your podcasts. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts, we're there. This week, we have a very special guest that we're excited to talk to, Mr. Adam Hood. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. We definitely appreciate you taking the time, because I probably came across I'm one of those nerds that whenever there's music I like to read the songwriting credits. And I've been doing that for many, many years. And I saw your name pop up on so many songs over the years. And then I think I had heard a couple of your songs like years ago, and I was like, I like this. But the first time that I saw like a performance of yours on YouTube, I think was 2 years ago. It was Riley Green's Golden Saw series. I think you were on episode 2. And right. I saw that, and I was like, I got to dive some more into this guy's music. And that's, kind of what led us into some of your older stuff. And then when harder stuff was dropped, we covered that. And I was like, when I had the opportunity to have you on the show, we couldn't pass it up, because Color Me is a big fan. So,
yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't consider it nerdy to read liner notes at all, to be honest. I think it's something that's, it's kind of like knowing Latin, strangely enough, though. But I mean, it's funny because when I got started, I'm a dinosaur. So when I got started playing music, the guys that I wanted to be like, and the guys that I appreciated the most were guys that really, that was where you saw their names the most. And so, it's funny how you give yourself 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, and times change dramatically to where by the time you work yourself up to a level to where people are seeing you in liner notes, nobody has liner notes anymore. So,
right.
But it's all right, though. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, of course. I think the first thing we do want to mention is all of us have had the opportunity to listen to your new record. Came out on the 16th. Bad Days Better. Big fans of it, man. Big fans of it.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to listen to it too. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard to take a chance on new music, and so it's a really special record. I mean, just by the people that participated in it, it's been a special record. So it means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, because you had what was it? Brent Cobb was the one who produced it, right?
Yeah, and so Brent is an old friend of mine. I mean, I met Brent. This was like 2009, 2010, maybe. And I was at Carnival Music, which is the publishing house in Nashville. I was there I was in my first year there. And I don't know that Brent had even moved to town yet. But he was in the courtship process of writing for Carnival, which is a company that he's still with now. But we met and we kind of hit it off. We're from close to the same area. He's from that Richland, Americus, Georgia area, which is about 2 hours east of where I'm from. I'm from Opelika, Alabama, so I'm about 30 minutes from the Georgia state line. So we knew a lot of the same people and played a lot of the same places, and just had a lot in common. So that's where the whole thing started, and it just kind of went from there. We've been friends a long time, and he's certainly seen me at my worst, and is the most honest as far as what he hopes to see from my music. So.
Oh yeah, Brent Cobb's an incredibly talented dude, both as a performer and a songwriter. He's another one of those guys that I discovered through reading liner notes, and then got into his music after that. But if I believe I read this correctly, you had a lot of the guys from Blackberry Smoke involved with the record as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, this was probably one of the best things to come out of COVID, in my opinion, for me and in my life too. And so we basically went down to Capricorn Studios in Macon, Georgia. That was a studio that had been pretty dilapidated, and then Mercer University went in and bought it and restructured. So they opened it back up in December of 2019. Well, March of 2020, the world shut down. And so, which in August of 2020, number one, there wasn't a whole lot of studio time that was being absorbed. Number two, nobody was doing anything. So my manager, Ben Ratliff, called Trey, their manager, and that was pretty easy. He was like, "What are you guys doing?" They were like, "Well, nothing." "Well, do you want to come make a record with Adam?" And they were like, "Well, sure. We don't have anything else to do." And so it was. I mean, if we tried to do it now, it'd have been an impossibility. But I'm glad we did. It was really neat. And I mean, I have the most respect for those guys. It was Charlie played guitar, and then Britt and Richard Turner were the bass player and the drummer. So they were the participants in the record.
Oh yeah,
I really like how this, when you see their names and the credits for it, how that you don't hear it right away, but once you see their name, like, oh, I can definitely hear their influence in these songs, but it doesn't sound just like them. It's a very good mix of all of it.
Thanks. Yeah, and I mean that was the cool thing was, well, number one, Brent didn't give Charlie any demos. Like they went in, like we all showed up on Monday with no idea what we were doing. Brent had gone back and listened to all my songs. I mean, I'd given him a list of 10, and I think he liked 4 of them. And so he had 4, and then out of the 4 that he liked, 2 of them were ones that we were going to record. So none of us really knew what to do. But I mean, he went back and listened to like 250 songs in my whole catalog, my back catalog. So yeah, he really did his homework, but didn't divulge any of that information to any of us until we got there. And so I think that was the good thing. It allowed a lot of spontaneity, and it allowed us none of us to be able to overthink any of this. We just went in and kind of served the song, and that's a really cool thing. It's really nice to be able to do it that way, and especially with those guys. I know it's an Adam Hood record. I know it's my record, but I don't feel like it's mine. I feel like that Brent has enough invested in it. Charlie and them have enough invested in it. I mean, Miranda has enough invested in it to where, like, if I'm able to go kind of, plow a little bit more and do a little bit more work with this record, because I know that people like that are invested in it. If it was just me serving my own purposes, I don't know how, I might not work as hard. So it's pretty neat.
It really is, like having, like you said, all those names that, people recognize that are into roots music involved is a cool thing. And then that's kind of cool hearing the backstory of how you, Brent, listened to that many songs. So how did you settle on those 10 songs? Was it just working with Brent, or was it just the ones that just felt right? Or
well, it was time to make a record anyway. And so Brent and I share an apartment in Nashville. We both rent an apartment from Randy Rogers. And so, but it's a 1-bedroom apartment. And so when Randy's there, he has the space. But when if Brent's there and I come to town, then one of us sleep on the couch, vice versa. So anyway, we were in the apartment at the same time, just kind of sitting around small talking. We're talking about a record. And so I kind of just shot out a song or two, and he told me what he thought about it. It was like, man, I like this, I don't like this. And so we just started through this process, and we got talking so in depth about it. I said, well, why don't you just produce a record? He said, well, I mean, I've never produced a record before. I said, well, this is a lot more conversation than most of the producers I've had. So it's kind of a no-brainer. And I mean, he jumped right in the driver's seat. And it was, I mean, my plan was totally just to trust him. I knew I could. I mean, he's close enough of a friend, and we've known each other long enough, and we've written enough songs together to where I knew that I could just completely just do my thing. And I mean, granted, if he'd have thrown something out there that I thought sucked, I'd have told him. But honestly, he really didn't give me a whole lot of opinion that I thought was wrong. And so it's cool to be able to kind of have someone like that knows you well enough to have the same opinion, but can step outside of it. Because I don't know. I don't know I know what I sound like, but I don't know what I sound like enough to where I can say, all right, I want to do this song as opposed to that one. I just go record the stuff that I like and hope that it works. And that's good. But it sometimes you got to understand your audience. And this was a good opportunity for me to start to understand my audience, basically, because Brent is my audience and his family is my audience, and the people in Ellaville, Georgia are my audience. And so it's been a pretty cool experience, a change of perspective for me, though, for sure.
Oh yeah. So like when it comes to like talking about the record specifically, like one of the things that really stuck out to me sonically was it's just overall it's a very groovy record. Like it's still rooted in country music, obviously, but it has just like this soulfulness to it that I really was drawn to, and some of that too is not just the production; it's also in your voice. Like you have a soulful voice, as it is. So it's like, was that just something that like kind of what you were saying that just kind of happened naturally in the studio, or was that kind of like you and Brent kind of sat down and talked about it, and like this is kind of what you were aiming for?
Yeah, that was kind of the point. And I mean, that was Brent's, the big broad stroke was, Adam, you sound like this and you've never represented yourself like this ever before. I mean, this is like what, I think it's like my fifth, sixth studio record. I mean, I've got like 8 or 9 that I sell to people, but so I've, out of all the stuff in my catalog that I've written, that I've released, and stuff that I've written for other people, like that's the stuff that I'm the most rooted in. However, it's the stuff, I mean, it's kind of like bad fiddle. You either play the fiddle right or you leave it alone, And so
right.
Like, blues is kind of like that too. And that groovy kind of stuff, you either represent it or you don't touch it, And so that's kind of how I always felt. I felt like it was such I didn't feel worthy, I guess, to for lack of a better word, to kind of go in there and do the more bluesy things. And, that was the biggest thing that Brent got out of me. I mean, I know I have other songs that may have been more poignant or something like that, and things that had, $5 words instead of the things that we chose. But at the same time, like the vibe of the record was what we intended to do. And we intended to do it because of the fact that I mean, man, Delbert McClinton that's what I love. Delaney and Bonnie's what I love. Clapton's what I love. I mean, I like Steve Earle stuff, but I'm not as much of a student of those kind of artists as I am of the ones that really, there's a difference between someone that you study and someone that you can represent. And so, I don't feel like I was able to represent myself as well until we did this record.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. It's like you're saying, like too, you're going for facing towards your audience too. It's, we're from a couple hours north of you really, but it does feel very authentic in that you represented so for example, like Speed of the South, like it just feels like something I would have grew up, around. It feels very familiar, I guess, be what I'm saying.
Right. And that's the cool thing about that, because, I mean, you listen to the context of that song and if there was more aim to that song, I would have hurt a lot of people's feelings, but there's no aim to it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just how I feel. I mean, honestly, to be honest with you, the whole context of that song was the fact that when I started playing music in Auburn University, and when I would go to Alabama or places like that, these college towns, everybody wanted to hear Allman Brothers songs and songs by the band. They wanted to hear Ophelia. They wanted to hear The Weight. They wanted to hear The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. Well, you go try those songs on kids now, and they don't know those songs. Nobody knows. Yeah. They don't know Ophelia. And so you kind of date yourself with songs that were classic. And so that was kind of the point, and so I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad that it came across like it was meant to come across.
Yeah, for sure on that, because like Andy and I were both talking about from the moment we were listening to it, the Speed of the South was an early standout for us, and it's kind of remained one of our favorite tracks on the record. Both lyrically, we can relate to it, and then it's just a jam in general, sonically.
Well, and be responding to it really well live too. You can kind of tell that once we're on stage and once we're playing it, that people they're more responsive to that song than others.
Oh yeah. So Andy, what was it you were saying earlier? I don't want to take your thing you had about just like Adam's music in general, about the southernality of it.
Yeah, the two is I saw too. It's like it's very good, simply Southern songs. It's simple as part of what the South is, and I've said too is that simple songs are very hard to do well. Because I think it's like what you says, when you're only using $5 words instead of $10 words, that you don't have as much to work with. It's very tough to pull it off, and it just very well pulled off the simple Southern, the whole thing all the way through very well, which is I think it's very hard to do.
Yeah, well, and that's I mean, it kind of goes back to the entire less is more thing. I mean, that's in art in general. The simpler you can make it, the more you can say with less, the better it's going to be, and so that's kind of always been my aim and kind of my life's effort to sort of try to say less with more, because there are guys that are great at it, man. I mean, I've heard John Mayer songs that are perfect almost. But then I've heard I know.
No. Kyle's laughing because we have a joke here on the podcast. I'm the only Mayer fan on the podcast, and these guys roast me for it. So he started laughing the moment you brought up Mayer.
I know.
Logan loves some John Mayer.
There's two schools of it. I totally get it. Yeah. So anyway.
But I mean, I tend to agree with you. There's a classic saying that if you're explaining, you're losing.
Yeah.
And if you're like, take, for example, a debate, if you have to explain away your position, for the most part, you're losing. Same goes for a song. If you're just throwing more words at it, a lot of times it doesn't work. And I think you, on the album, you've done a phenomenal job with, like I said, it's not a lot of $20 and $30 words in there. And it's none of your sentences, none of your verses are wasted is what I took away from the album. There's not a lot of, I call it a snow job.
Yeah.
It says nothing, only words. That's what snow stands for.
I mean, who wants to talk to like that? I don't want anybody to talk to me like that. So why would I even, why would I talk to anybody like that in conversation, much less in my music? Something that like, this has staying power. This is the stuff that my children, like when I'm gone, my grandkids this is my representation, so I mean, I'll probably say a lot more cuss words than I probably should for my
Don't we all?
It's a crazy thing when you really sit back and think about it. Our grandparents, great grandparents, for the most part, we have no idea who they were.
Yeah.
But really starting with your generation and our generation, we will live on forever. This podcast and, your music will, your grandkids, great grandkids can just pull it up and listen to it and hear what your voice sounded like.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crazy thing. And
it's so interesting because it's funny you say that. I'm glad you did, because like with my grandmother, my mom's mom, she was the best at storytelling. And so, but before she passed away, and she's been gone for a long time. But before she died, my aunt actually got a cassette, like recorded her telling stories on cassette tape. But that's like, for my kids, like that's the only representation that they'll have. And so it's really, you hold on to those things. They're really special. And also it's nice to have more than just that. You know what I mean? Because
right. Yeah.
Still with that, like it's just this one little avenue of all the wonderful things that, grandparent was. So that's cool. Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's good to know.
Yeah. Like I said, I think you did a great job with the record.
Thank you.
My favorite song on the record is Bad Days Better. Was there any self-reflection, or was this just kind of you wing it, or was there the song is about just having in my opinion, you can tell me if I'm wrong, just having a optimistic view. Let's just let everything roll off the shoulder. We're not even going to worry about it.
That's absolutely it. I mean, positive outlook. And the cool thing is about that is like, Bad Days Better was one of the songs that was a newer song. So songs like, Speed of the South was newer. Bad Days Better was new. Harder Stuff, we hadn't even finished that one when we went to the studio. But like, Don't Do It, I've had that one for a while. Flesh and Blood, I've had that one for a while. So songs like that, like I've had those for a while. But you can kind of tell in the context. I mean, of course, the elephant in the room with that record was, me getting off of drinking and stuff like that. But in that process, there's a lot of, there was a lot of, well, what caused you to drink in the first place? I mean, if you have nothing to be upset about, well, what the hell are you escaping from? And so that was during COVID and even a year before that, I mean, that was my life. You know what I mean? Just kind of the sitting around thinking about those kind of things. And so, positivity is kind of learned behavior. And I've always admired people that were positive, but when you get to know those people, you realize that they didn't shoot out that way. You know what I mean? Like it's usually, sometimes it's, it's trauma that makes people like that. And with me, it's certainly very much a work in progress. I still have my moments, but it's just, and it's harder initially, but it's easier on your life, to just kind of, like you said, let it roll off your back, man.
Well, like I said, I really vibe with the song because, like I said, we're a little bit younger than you, but starting to get to that age where I was fairly a hothead in my younger 20s. We're all approaching 30 here. But I'm just getting to the point where it's just not even worth it. I don't even care. And I really vibe with that song because of that. Just there's some BS over here, but I'm just gonna just let it go.
Yeah, I know. You can either let it go or you can get on blood pressure medicine. I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah, and I don't really want to be on blood pressure medicine.
No,
so,
blood pressure medicine.
yeah, I mean, I vibe with this song hardcore. So, and like I said, it's a heavy hitter right out of the gate, which I really respect. Any artist that puts, don't take this the wrong way, but that just puts a heater at the beginning of their album.
Yeah, thank
you.
Because
it takes a lot to. This is not, don't take it, but it takes a lot to just come out of the gate hot.
Well, we knew with this record we had to. You know what I mean? Like,
I really respect that.
Thank you. And we couldn't ease into it. Like, there were definitive statements that it was time to make sonically, lyrically, stylistically as a human. So
because it hooked me off the first song. I was like, yeah, let's go.
Good. I'm glad to hear it, man. That's great.
I'm all for, just diving right in.
Good.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, because like I said, I'm that guy that loves reading the songwriting credits. Like, you're a well-known and well-respected songwriter, outside of your own music as well. And like, one thing I'm fascinated to talk to songwriters that are actually like, they are the songwriters behind, a lot of songs we hear. And do you approach it differently when you're writing for your own record versus writing in a room for someone else, or is it a similar process?
I mean, I've always, my attitude has always been, if I can, if nobody else will record it, I'll do it. But, at the same time, there's two ways of looking at it. Like, it's either like with females, I'm not going to go in and write a song from a male perspective. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to write a song with a female complaining about my problems I have with my wife. We're not going to do anything with that. But also, you kind of want to serve the artist, you want to serve the collaborator, but you want to serve the song too. And so, I mean, but the other side of that is the fact that, like, people call me for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, there are things that I do well, and there are things that I can't do at all. And so I've always wanted to be that because I had that understanding. I've always wanted to be the kind of guy that people say, if you want to do this, you need to call Adam to do it. And so, for me, that was kind of the point to collaborating. You kind of know what you're not gonna call me and expect to get this really elaborate electronic pop song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's similar to what I think I heard. I think it was Craig Wiseman. I heard him say one time that when he first got into like the songwriting circles, he said that he was like the tempo guy. They knew that when they needed some tempo, they would call him up, when he first started. So that's interesting. I think that makes sense because from what I've seen when I've read, like, especially it's more prevalent on mainstream records than it is independent records. You can kind of tell when you listen to the song who probably some of the songwriters are. And it's just like the people's fingerprints are all over it with the type of lyricism they use, the way that the song is written, from whether it's built with a track or whether it's done, a little more organically or whatever. I mean, you normally can kind of get a sense of that.
Yeah, and I didn't realize I had so much of a fingerprint until it took me a couple of years. You know what I mean? And it was like, well, man, I can really hear that song and sounds like you wrote it. And then I thought, well, golly, I wonder why. So after a couple of years, I sort of, I could kind of see my fingerprint enough to know that, okay, here's what I like about it. Here's what I don't like about it. Here's some stuff that I can make better. Here's the stuff I need to leave alone. So it's, it's all kind of, man, it's all a process. I mean, just trying to make every song better.
Oh yeah, and even if you look at some of the more well-known collaborations you've had with mainstream artists, whether it's Miranda or Riley, like those two are a little bit more of the more organic, rootsier artist within the mainstream sphere. And then I saw you had multiple cuts on like the new Muscadine Bloodline record, and that project is different from previous eras of their music sonically. So it's like you said, you can kind of see that stuff, and I think it's even exhibited in the artists that cut the songs.
Well, and I mean, the Muscadine record is a good example of that. I mean, Gary Charlie kind of reached out to Brent and I and said, look, we want to make this record. This is what we want to do. So give us 3 or 4 days. And I mean, we went in, I think we had 4 days, and we wrote 6 songs on that record, 5 songs. And then we wrote that new single, Evan Rudin, and then maybe 1 or 2 more. So we got a lot out of that. I mean, it was 2 a day for 3 or 4 days.
Oh, wow. Do you ever like get, or is it just more natural at this point? Do you ever kind of get like songwriting burnout, churning out that much in a quick period of time?
I go through cycles. Like, I mean, I'm in kind of the cycle right now where like, I'm not really coming up with a lot of ideas. Like the context doesn't come to me as easily, but because I'm not so concerned with that, like I can get into a room and knock out your second verse pretty fast. That's kind of my way of doing things. And I've learned that from Brent, because Brent is one of those guys that, like, you know, he always comes in with the first verse and the chorus written already, which is kind of the song, to be honest with you. And I mean, I've said this 1,000 times, you know, I mean, going in and writing with him is kind of like cheating, you know, but at the same time, here's the deal. He's still got to like it. And so, you know, there's songs that he's got the verse and the chorus, and I've thrown out the second verse and he's hated it, you know. So, but nonetheless, you know, you got to fit into the style. But yeah, I mean, you know, I feel like I'm a great second verse writer. I'm the guy. I suck at hooks. I could do bridges if you want me to, but I'm a great second verse writer.
And see, I think that personally, like, I think that the second verse in my mind is the hardest one to write, just because the first verse, like, you're coming up with the idea and you can kind of go anywhere you want with it. Then that kind of informs the chorus unless you add the hook first. But then the second verse, you don't want it to be just a watered down rehash of the first. So Correct. In order to make it quality and to actually have it say something, that's always the more difficult part in my mind.
Well, and that first line is just as important as the hook line, too. I mean, like you said, you got to grab them. And if you don't grab them within the first 4 lines, they're probably not going to get to the chorus anyway. But if you can get them to the chorus, then you got it. That you get into the second verse before they turn it off. And man, you know, that's like, I agree with you. That's when you really put the icing on the cake. Yeah.
Yeah. So when would you say, like, because I know that coming up on, I think it's October 22nd, you're making your Grand Ole Opry debut, right?
Pretty exciting. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Are you nervous?
I'm nowhere near as nervous as I'm going to be. I am nervous, yes, but I mean, like, I'll wet my pants. So, I mean, I just get nervous anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
I
get nervous before, you know, the show's on Tuesday. So this Opry thing is, I mean, we're talking about my doggone clothes and stuff like that. I'm gonna be nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be too. I couldn't do it. I would.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't do it. I mean, there's so much history there. It's
an honor. It really is, and it's really one of those things that I didn't even realize that we were shooting for that. You know, and I kind of, you know, my publicist and my manager called and said, "Hey, you got to gig on the Opry," and I thought, "Wow, I didn't even know that I have my name in the hat," or something like that. You know, but it was really, I realize how special it is now. You know, it's country music's pat on the back, you know, and so I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad to have the opportunity.
So is this the first time you get to go through the artist entrance there?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, not even as a writer. Like I haven't even walked in there with Brent, so I'm actually going there for the first time myself. Yeah.
Oh wow, it's a heck of an honor.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
So with you having that milestone in your career with the Grand Ole Opry, let's rewind it a little bit. What would you say was kind of like the first big, quote unquote, big break you had that kind of kickstarted your career, both as an artist and a songwriter?
I mean, I'd say Miranda, my relationship with Miranda. But you know, that's one of those things where, like, I didn't realize the benefit of it for a long time. You know, I mean, even now, like, I mean, it's taken a while to sort of be able to realize, oh wow, but she's kind of the person that discovered me, you know. I mean, and so, you know, I had a pretty serendipitous meeting with her, like, I don't know, 2006 maybe. It was before that Different Groove album, so I think I made that record in 2007. I don't know, it's been a long time, but you know, it was a meeting that turned into playing a birthday party, that turned into a publishing deal, that turned into you know, all the people that I've met turned into, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's just, it paid off exponentially. And man, she's she's been behind me all the way. And her, her parents are super sweet. I mean, in fact, we're in the middle of a 2-week run. And I mean, the first night out, we went and stayed at their house. And so they're just wonderful people. And they could always continue to be.
Oh yeah, because it's Kyle and I always talk about Miranda a lot whenever she has a new songs out on the show, because we're like you said earlier, we're 28, so like we grew up right in that era where we were like middle school when she was like hitting it big first. So we've grown up listening to Miranda from like middle school on to being pushing 30 now. Big fans of hers. So like, what was
a little more big fans? I have a mega crush on Miranda Lambert, but yeah, beside the point.
I don't blame.
Yeah.
So she just real well. I mean, that's the top of the heap, I mean, that's as big as it gets, and she just is, man, she's real down to earth for somebody that's as big as it gets, for someone to be able to respond so quickly. It's cool because, and forgive me for being this way, but sometimes there's, you start out a certain way, then you kind of have to pilfer through this wall of arrogance, and I know a lot of it's just a lot of it's insecurity, or just not having chops, or not knowing what to do. But then you kind of you get into where people like her are, and you realize, man, they're just special people, and she's a special person.
So how did you first like have the first encounter meeting Miranda? For like you said that she booked you for a birthday party?
Yeah, so I was playing a place in Texas, in New Braunfels. The Americana station there, KMBT, used to do this thing called Roots and Branches, and it was Wally Hubbard would host. So he would bring in 2 acts a night, and so I was playing it that night, and it was this place called Tavern on the Green, and it was right next to this bed and breakfast. Well, her car had broken down, and she and her mother were on vacation, and so they said, we can't get to your car till tomorrow, so just you'll have to wait. And so they said, well, we'll just let's go stay in this little house, and we'll go over there and get us a drink. And I mean, as soon as that's what they did, and I was playing when they walked in. So sorry, and Casey Musgraves with the too. So yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, right place, right time kind of thing.
Once in my life, yeah.
I feel you on that. I always joke with the guys, the timing is not Logan's thing. but so like when it comes to like kind of like going on now that you've kind of been established as a songwriter, and then you've also put out around 5 records now, which you like in your own heart of hearts, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the writing room, or do you prefer playing like live shows and playing your own stuff?
I'd much rather do the writing stuff. Being on the road's hard, I mean, just because I got little kids and I'm an older guy, and just that there's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of people doing it. There's a lot of inconsistency. I mean, you think about it, every night you're in a different place, and so you kind of never. I heard Drew Barrymore say, you have to learn how to be comfortable with discomfort, and I'm kind of Cliff Notes quoting her on that, and I thought that's an interesting perspective. And so that's kind of living the traveler's life. And so, it's the difficult part. I enjoy it. I mean, the 90 minutes that I'm on stage, I love it. I mean, it's what I do. I mean, I started playing for people before I started writing songs, but yeah, it's the hardest part. And there's nothing more satisfying than finishing a song. I mean, nothing. It's just the biggest burden lifted, and not even. I don't even necessarily have to feel burdened when I'm, when I walk into a writer's room. But man, it's a wonderful feeling finishing a thing.
Did you come from a musical family, or were you like one of the first ones to pick it up?
I mean, my father was a forester, and my mother, she was a real estate agent when I was in high school. She owns a flower shop now. Nobody could carry a tune in a bucket. They tried everything: footballs, baseballs, basketballs, and so they just wound up, well, hell, let's put a guitar in his hand to see what happens, and it actually took. So,
hey, it's funny how this stuff works, because my mom can sing quite well. Me and my 2 sisters, not a chance in hell. No chance. Yeah, funny how that works, I mean, it's like the inverse of your family. Do you have any like special celebrations? You finish a song, finish an album that you've collabed on. Do you you guys do anything special when you finish?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like it jinxes it. I feel like
okay. I like your conspiracy mentality.
I know.
Conspiracy theorist here.
Exactly. And so it's like, by celebrating, that makes me rock back on my heels. And when I rock back on my heels, I get knocked off my feet. So that's kind of how I've always looked at it. So
okay, interesting.
We high five and stuff like that. But like ritual celebrations, I'm scared of them.
Okay. Yeah. I find that really interesting.
Yeah. Superstitious. Yeah. More conspiracy. Yeah, for sure.
Andy, you look like you're about to say something.
Yeah. I hear you've said a lot. You seem very self-aware of what you're good at and what you're not good at. Or how much do you think that has helped contribute to your success? That sounds like something that's the person I would want that knows what they can do.
I mean, it's kind of my trajectory. I mean, it's what I wanted to do. And I feel like I'm probably more self-aware in my career than I am with anything else in my life, but that's most of us. But, I just want to be able to do that. And because man, I mean, with music, like there is so much. I mean, I went to study jazz guitar for a little while. And I failed miserably at it. Like I thought my college years were going to be studying jazz guitar. And not only did I can't read music. And so I tried to start learning how to play guitar at a college level for someone who can't read music, number one. And then number two, I was a freshman going into this college, and I saw all the guys that were seniors graduating. They were teaching guitar lessons to 12-year-olds. And I said, hell, I ain't going to do this, man. So it made me rethink my steps. And that was kind of one of the things that made me start going, okay, you got to figure out what is it that you want to do, and pick your lane and try to stay in it and be the best you can. And the good thing is, like you said, the Southern thing, inside of the realm of Southern country, gospel, blues music, there's a lot of stuff to learn, and there's a lot of different artists, and there's a lot of history, and there's a lot of future. And so I got my work cut out for me, even staying in that lane.
Yeah, there's also a lot of critics.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that grew up on that if it isn't what it's supposed to be, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, the good news is I'm at that age right now where I'm probably their age anyway, so they can't say nothing to me about it.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
It's like you were mentioning earlier how like a lot of times if you go to college bars now, the kids don't know the band, and like, which is I'm a little bit of an old soul. So it's like, I realize that I probably like am an outlier for even people my age group, but it blows my mind when I go and like, to them, classic music is Blink-182.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's so funny. I mean, my sister-in-law didn't know what a record player was. You know what I mean? And I can remember life before the internet, so on payphones.
I think we're actually the last generation that will remember, us three and you, but our age group is the last generation that will remember life before the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. It really did. Just life is a completely different thing.
Because I remember having dial-up. My mom screaming at me to get off my Xbox or PlayStation because she had a phone call.
I think my wife still has an AOL account. I think she actually still, I don't know. I think she still has.
That was classic times, coming home from school, getting on AIM, Messenger, messaging people. Yeah, that was the good old days.
Those were days. That's funny, man. That's funny.
Yeah, man. So, do you have any big plans to like tour on this record, like going on a big tour for the rest of the year or maybe next summer or anything? We're just pounding pavement basically. But I try to save up for new markets. Like we're going to try to go out to the West Coast next summer. But as far as like tours, with supporting other acts, we don't really have any plans so far. And that's okay. I've got buddies that have just kind of figured this out, plowing their own, their own lane. So that's kind of what we're doing. But yeah, we're like this weekend we'll be, this week, I guess we'll be in New Orleans. I haven't been to New Orleans since the last record. And so, and then, a couple of weeks, I'll go up to like Kentucky area, and I hadn't been there since the last record and things like that. So
so there are markets that are a little bit outside of home base that I try to get to. So yeah, I mean, definitely we're gonna go tour to support it. I try to save up those runs for when there is a record.
Right. So who are some of your like your top 3 favorite people to write with?
Brent is one. Pat McLaughlin is the guy that I've written all my songs with. Not all, but like I wrote. I mean, you can go back through my catalog since The Shape of Things, like The Tennessee Will, Way Too Long. Like a lot of my singles I've written with Pat. And so Pat was just kind of, a guy that's, I mean, he is to me what, like, he's about 15 years older than me and just has a cool perspective. And, he's an older dad that had kids that are older. You know what I'm saying? Like, his age difference between his kids and him are just like that. So, I mean, I've really looked up to him. Let's see, who else? I said Brent already. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of other guys that I should be saying that I write with. I can't think of them.
If they hear this, they're going to be like, Adam, you didn't name drop me.
Say anything about me? What?
Who's some people, past or present, that you would love to get to work with, or have gotten the chance to work with?
I mean, I'll go get to work with Delbert McClinton. So John Hyatt is the guy that made me decide to do what I wanted to do, but Delbert McClinton is the guy that made me decide how I wanted it to sound. And so I've always kind of skirted around his life, and so I finally get to go on that Delbert cruise in January. So I'm going to get on a boat with him. And he can't run from me on that damn boat. Really looking forward to that. So that's cool.
Yeah, so that's some stuff we always like to, whenever we've had artists on, we like to ask those things because you get so many different answers from so many different genres, and like people who haven't had a chance to like talk to artists and songwriters sometimes don't realize the outside influences and not just from the genre they're playing in. It's always cool to kind of get that perspective, because there was one guy we had on that it was like, he sings kind of like, he's into like the younger part of the Texas music scene, but it's like a little more on the rock and roll side. And it was just like, it was like Green Day and Tom Petty. It was like, was it right up there for it? And it's like, it may not be people that that you think are like big influences, but they are. So it's something we always like to ask.
Yeah, that's cool.
But so like along with, would you say, what's your favorite project you've put out so far of like your solo records?
This one, of course, aside from this one, the one before that, I really enjoyed. That was called Somewhere in Between, and that was really that was kind of my effort of having more control. And I didn't produce it, but Orrin Thornton produced the record, and Orrin and I have worked together in some capacity since I've been recording, pretty much. He engineered The Shape of Things. He engineered all the demos that we did during those Carnival years, and then he mixed this record. And then he produced that record. And so he and I kind of, we kind of think the same. And so that was a fun record to make, just because I feel like that, I could do everything that I wanted to do. I could do anything that I wanted to do. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that last record. So
kind of tying it back into one of the first things we talked about on here, how did that come about during, back a couple years ago with the Golden Saw series for you and Brent to kind of get on that with Riley Green?
Man, I've known Riley for a long time. And so, in fact, sorry.
It's all good.
Starbucks. So Riley, I met him through my wife's old roommate's husband. And so like he played their wedding rehearsal, and Charles was always like, man, you got to get into Riley Green. I was like, I don't know who this guy is talking about. So I met him a long time ago. And so we have always kind of stayed in touch and stuff like that. And, he's just always been just, one of those people that has always kind of kept me in mind. And it's really cool. And I had gone down there and, I did this thing with this, it's called the Dark Horses. And it was me and Channing Wilson and Eric Dillon and Dave Kennedy. So the four of us kind of did a writer's round. And one of the shows that we did was at the Golden Saw. And it was before Riley started taping these things. Like he did this and I mean, man, it's like all his family, they all come out there. They sit and do those things. And, I didn't understand that people were going to watch that show, to be honest with you. And I mean, a lot of people watched that show. So it was pretty neat. But I mean, talk about authentic. I mean, that's as authentic as it gets. I mean, that's really like, he lives on the hilltop where that thing is, and his parents live there, and his uncle lives back there. And I mean, it's pretty neat. So it was a special thing to be able to do it.
Yeah, I saw that when y'all did that, everybody each night that he had him on there, he always said there was a rule that everybody got one cuss word according to his grandma.
I mean, she was there. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a joke. She was there.
But no, that was very cool. Like I said, that was one of the first times like I got to see like a video of you performing, and it got me more into like kind of the path down to like getting into your solo music. So I have to credit Riley Green on that for me, like discovering your stuff, because I had seen your name, many times through the years, and then I finally, took the plunge into it. And I've definitely been a big fan. But I
appreciate that. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah. Andy, Kyle, you guys have any other questions?
Well, I got one. If you had one cuss word to choose, what would it have been?
Hell.
Hell? Okay. Well, in the South, hell is like a semi-cuss word. It's like when you hit like 16 or 17, it's almost passable, even for the deep Southern Baptist. It's almost passable. It's not the S and the F and a couple other words down there. But hell's a good one to introduce yourself with.
Right.
It's not a good one to drop, at the blue. It's a good first one to drop though.
Put it in a song about Jesus on this record too. You know what I mean? So I mean, if you do it, I guess I guess
it works out right.
Yeah, you're right. That's cool.
It's fun. It's funny how old Southern Baptist women are.
There's some interesting ladies. You might as well just go on and understand that whatever is said to you is not what is intended to be said to you. And what they meant to say to you will be said to someone else as soon as you leave it.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And if they ever say one of those words, boy, have you crossed a line.
Yeah, right.
You are in some deep shit then.
Yeah.
If you hear older Southern Baptist women say damn or shit or something, boy, you done messed up.
Yeah, no. Well, talking about Miranda's parents, I mean, that's always been the thing. Like, man, they're big stickers about it. There's rule number 1: no F-bombs in this house. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, I've had friends they kicked out. You know what I mean? Like one good F-bomb, they're like, nah, you gotta go.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's a Southern tradition though.
It is. I agree.
Oh yeah. Well, the new record is Bad Days Better. It's available on all streaming platforms. Make sure you purchase it if you want to do that too, because always we try to push purchasing the record if you can. And again, we appreciate you taking the time, because like I said, I've been a big fan of you as a songwriter, and the last couple of years you as an artist for a while. So whenever I got the opportunity to have you on the show, man, I jumped at it. I was like, I definitely would like to sit down and have a conversation with you.
Well, I appreciate you guys paying attention. It means a lot. It means a lot that you, like I said, I mean, my wife, she played the last thing about the review of the song. And I mean, I appreciate your perspective and your opinions. They're honest, and it has everything had to do with the context of the music. And that's really, I mean, I can't do any better than that. I mean, try to write the best songs I can. There's no other strategy. There's no business plan. There's no theatrics. There's nothing other than that. And I think you guys get that, and you seem to encourage it. And I appreciate you doing that. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Oh yes, sir. I mean, that's some high praise that we definitely don't deserve, but we appreciate you said the kind words.
You're right about that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you guys too.
Yes, sir. But that's for this episode of Country and Cold Cans. I'm Logan, sitting here with trucker Andy Kyle, and this week's special guest, Adam Hood. All right, we'll see you next time.